hopefully that mic will pick it up. All right. Okay, so we are here in Ogallala, Idaho for the 2025 Grace Conference. We got Pastor Alex Kurz and his wife Sherry with us today. And we're very excited about this. Alex and I have been teaching a conference. We taught 2 lessons this morning and 2 lessons last night. 1 tonight, 1 tomorrow. And we thought we took some time because it's so rainy up here. Just to do a little podcast. Yeah.
It's nice.
And just to get to know Alex and Sherry. If people don't know, I can't imagine somebody who doesn't know who would be listening to this podcast. But welcome. So thanks for being here. This is great. This is one of the things we're kind of doing in Portland now. And we have 2 different podcasts. We're doing the Grace Life Northwest podcast, but then we're doing another one, Grace Unfiltered, with some people that they have taken their house and they've made it into a studio.
Oh, nice.
So that's kind of where we got the idea. They have a lot better equipment than what we have here. So first thing though, because I have an interest in this, you get new grandparents.
Yes, number 7.
Number 7.
Our kids are working overtime.
And have 2 kids.
Yes.
2 kids and 7 grandchildren.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
That's great.
Yeah.
Number 7 is only 2 months old now. Yeah.
Tomorrow will be 2 months.
Yeah.
Congratulations. How old's the oldest?
11.
Oh, I got it right.
Good job, Grandpa.
That's
That's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. So, I like to do, just ask some questions about you. How long? We'll get into Shorewood in detail in a little bit, but how long have you guys been in Chicago and in Shorewood?
Well, I actually grew up in Chicago. I came to know the Lord when I was 8 years old, 1968. I'm revealing my age. And actually got saved as a result of attending North Shore Church in Chicago, Illinois. If you're not familiar with the history, North Shore, of course, well known because Pastor J.C. O'Hare was the pastor of North Shore. Originally, it was the North Shore Congregational Church, and then in the 40s, I think it was, they renamed it North Shore Church. Now, O'Hare was long gone before I started attending, but anyway, I'm a kid going to the youth clubs. I was, 7 years old, I guess.
Did your parents took you there?
No, actually, it was a friend of mine. He invited me. I mentioned this morning we lived in a high-rise, and so the school, the elementary school, literally was behind the church building. There was an alley that separated the school and North Shore Church, and my childhood friend, he said, "Hey, you want to come to a youth club during the week?" And I said, "Oh yeah, games and fun and food, whatever." So I started attending, and I really liked it. They had a really good time, and then I was invited to attend Sunday school. I thought they were going to have games and fun. And then I attended Sunday school, and I was a little bummed out because we're not playing any games. And long story short, I stuck with it. I get saved. My mom's not saved. She was Catholic. And over time, my sister started attending Sunday school.
Okay.
She gets saved. My mother wants to know what in the world's going on because we wanted to attend every Sunday. One Sunday I was sick. I wanted to go. My mom wouldn't let me go. So she decided to find out what's going on. So she started attending North Shore, and then she ultimately gets saved. So,
Wow, that's
that was a wonderful thing. So long story short, I grew up in Chicago, attended North Shore since I was 8 years old. I graduated high school, went into the Air Force. 4 years later, I come back to Chicago, and my mom tricks me to attend the church. Only at that time, North Shore is meeting with another church, Norwood Bible Church. Some of the old timers may remember Pastor Cal Ellison. He was the pastor at the time. So I started attending the combined group, North Shore, Norwood. It became Shorewood in 1983. And that's when Richard at that time started Grace School of the Bible.
Wow.
Sherry and I met, started a youth group there at Shorewood in Chicago. And we get married. She fell madly in love with me, obviously. And,
We've been married 40 years this summer. So
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
1985.
That's wonderful.
And we left for ministry in Altoona, Pennsylvania. I was asked to be associate/youth pastor at Altoona Bible Church. So we were in Altoona for almost 9 years.
Oh, that's a long time.
And by then, Shorewood was growing, and they wanted to do some things. Richard was getting busy, and so he asked if maybe we would consider returning back to Chicago. And so in 1995, we moved back to Chicago, and we've been back ever since.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna follow up, some of that was the questions I had written down here. The next one, though, is you addressed it, is how did you get saved? Did you grow up in Chicago as well?
No, I grew up in New York, Massachusetts, Florida, Washington DC. So I was raised in a congregational and then a Presbyterian church. Interesting fact, my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather came over from Scotland with a congregational church that he built in Virginia in the 1680s.
Oh my
And that church is still there holding services, and his grave is there,
Wow.
and his wife's.
What fascinating.
So we had
Yes.
that in our blood from ever, so we were always Presbyterian or congregational. So I grew up in that, and when I went to college, I said, I don't see it. I didn't see them living the life. I didn't see the sense of read one verse out of the Old Testament, read one verse out of the New, let's say the Our Father, let's sing a song, let's talk about how to be good. And that's basically the pattern.
Right.
So I just wrote the pastor a letter and said, I don't see this, I'm not seeing it in how you're living, I'm not seeing it how my parents are living, I'm not seeing the doctrine, and the Bible has too many contradictions, so I'm just gonna not come back. So I went to college in Illinois. And after I graduated, I got a job in the Chicago area. While I was living in an apartment there, 3 guys in the apartment complex came around giving the gospel and right division. And one of them was Pastor Chuck Wiltshire. He wasn't a pastor at that time. He invited me to their Bible study, so I went. And as soon as I was there 2 times, I'm like, I'm saved, and I know why there's no contradictions now. The Bible melds, it all works.
Wow.
So we were together a few years, and then they realized that they needed more teaching. So they looked for a church, and they found Shorewood.
Okay.
So one Sunday, we all walked in, like a whole group of 20 or somethings, just walked in the door, and we never left.
I'm
Oh,
sure
that's
this
great.
Yeah,
Is that where you guys met? Is that
so
at
we
the
met
church?
there,
At the church,
at the
okay.
church, yeah.
Okay, and you weren't the pastor?
No, I was studying to be an engineer at the time. I actually had plans to go back to the Air Force. And when Richard started Grace School of the Bible, we already had a youth group going. And that's really how we got to know each other.
Right.
We started the youth group. And our very first youth group leaders meeting, it was snowing very, very hard. And I didn't think anybody was going to show up for this meeting. Sherry was the only one that showed up. And so we're supposed to be talking about, hey, we're going to start this youth group and so on. And I guess we started talking about all sorts of things besides the youth group. So I think that was the spark that kind of got us to think about, hey, maybe there's a relationship there possibly.
You were like in your mid-20s or late 20s?
I was, when you.
Well, you were early
23.
20s, and I was later 20s.
I was just a little child.
I'm 4 years older, so.
Oh, okay. So we met there at Shorewood. We started the youth group. We were pretty involved, and Richard started Grace School of the Bible. He asked if I would want to attend, and so I said, oh, absolutely. And then, of course, you start learning the Word of God, the clarity, the scriptures, and so on and so forth. So next thing you know, I don't have any desire to go back to the Air Force. Now I'm thinking, well, what's going to happen here? We eventually get married, and not sure what direction to go. I did have an engineering job in the Chicagoland area, but it was around that time, Altoona Bible Church, they were looking for a youth pastor, and I knew the pastor there, John Beckemeyer. I knew him, and so at the time I said, yeah, that's something.
You were down there for 2 years.
And how did they know
That's
you
when
were
our kids were born.
because you knew John?
Well, I knew John, and we would see each other at some of the conferences, the National Bible Conference that was held at the time, Cedar Lake, Indiana. So I knew John through the conferences, and he saw that we were heavily involved with the youth ministry. And I'll tell you what, we had a pretty good ministry going. We had a church van, and I'm picking kids up all over the place and so on. And so John, he said when there was they needed someone to fill the role, he thought of me and reached out. And I thought, hey, maybe.
I love hearing that about what you say about the youth group, because so often we think grace churches need to operate differently. The doctrine's clearly different, but when I the first time went to Southern California, and I've never been to the church down there, but I've been to the conferences, and I realized they can be a church like every other church with music and a youth group and an outreach, and it doesn't just have to be some people to meet in the gymnasium of a school, though that's fine, that's where you get started. But it's so exciting for me to hear that. And I took it, Richard gave me a tour, took me downtown to see the original North Shore, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
And he told me at one time, J.C. O'Hare had maybe 1,000 people.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
They
yeah.
had.
That is amazing, yeah.
Well, Altoona Bible Church did too.
And that's in Pennsylvania.
And that's in
So that's what you
Pennsylvania.
guys got from Chicago
Right,
to Pennsylvania.
right.
Just as a curiosity, did Richard do your marriage ceremony?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And just a little fun fact, Ricky Jordan Jr. was his first and only Bible study student in Sunday school. He was the teacher, Ricky was the only student. So that's how they got started, so,
Okay.
Yeah.
poor Ricky.
Yeah, but look where he's at now.
Yeah, I know.
You take
Wonderful.
all the credit.
Yeah, you should. Yeah. It's got nothing to do with his own personal study or school. No, it's not. It's an hour at Sunday school. So you were in the military. I know you spent time in Alaska. This is before you were already out of the military before you guys met?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was pretty out, and I got out in 82. The group started attending around 83, I think.
It must have been, because we were married in 85, so it
Yeah,
had to
so
have
it
been
had
about that.
Because I've been around you enough to know, but I've seen you're like a little boy when a train goes by or a truck goes by. And I've noticed it. I remember you were downtown last year in Portland, when you came to Portland, we went downtown,
Oh, yeah.
and the train went across the bridge, and I'm like, where's Alex? It's just like a little boy. I think it's
You
great.
know,
I
it's
think
funny.
it's great, because I have that same thing.
We have a driver. I want to call her a cabbie. She's really become a friend. Okay, she's a real sweet lady. So anyway, we're driving to O'Hare, and I haven't been on the L train for years, right? CTA, Chicago Transit Authority. So we're driving to O'Hare, and here comes the other train. And most people are looking at the artwork and the shine, and I'm looking at all of the pneumatics, and I'm looking at all of the brakes. I'm looking at the valves, and I'm thinking,
That's incredible.
I'm looking at how the thing is built. So I still have an interest in some of the mechanical things, especially airplanes.
When we mentioned earlier, I know John gave up his commission to stay teaching, and then you've given up that engineering career to go and teach. And I'm assuming, from a financial standpoint, it's probably financially more rewarding in engineering.
Oh, of course.
Than
In a
ministry.
way.
It can be potentially, now, I got a degree in aeronautical engineering. Back in the day, it was more feast or famine, it all depended on, the contracts. Now, out here in the Northwest, of course, you got Boeing, and they're huge.
Right.
So I had friends, it was rough. So it just depends.
And so how long were you in Pennsylvania?
Now, we were there 9 years.
9 years, I
We
think.
came back in 95.
Both their kids were born there.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
And why did you, I know Richard made the call, but what made you decide that, we're gonna leave here, and I guess it was home?
Yeah, it was home. My mother, actually, she moved out to Altoona. We were there at Altoona Bible Church for a number of years. We started a church in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And as a consequence of, I got a job as a courier, part-time courier for FedEx. And it was a little challenging. Johnstown was a little bit further than.
So you're pastoring this church now? You've left.
At the time we
Right.
started Johnstown.
Okay, so you left Upson, and you were at Johnstown, and then you're working for FedEx.
Yes, and it was getting to be a bit of a struggle financially.
And you have 2 children by
We
now.
had
Right.
children, and.
Are you teaching at this time?
No, I was home with the kids.
Yeah. And it was about that time, Richard, asked, hey, any interest in maybe coming back, and thought about it. I said, yeah, the problem is my sister was in Chicago and her husband, and we still had some friends, relatives, so. Yeah.
Did your family's not in Chicago?
No, my family's never lived in the same state.
Oh.
I have a brother in one state, a sister in another. My
Okay.
parents were in another. While I was in college, they moved from Washington DC to Nashville. So when I got out of college, I really didn't have a home to go back to. So it was kind of like I'm on my own.
So
So
what,
that's how I was raised.
did you homeschool your kids?
We did hard times. So what happened was, when we were in Altoona, we left when my son was 7, going into 2nd grade. We had them in a private Christian school there, a Baptist school there.
Sure.
Then when we went to, when we got back to Illinois, our friends highly suggested we go to this Christian school that their son was at. So this is Pastor Chuck Wilcher, who I got saved through.
Right.
His kids were going to this Christian school, and they said, that's a great place for you to go. So my daughter was going into kindergarten, my son was going into 2nd, so we went there for 2 years. And then we were driving 45 minutes from Chicago to this school and back. And it was getting to be a bit much, plus financially, so we decided to homeschool at that point. So we homeschooled through junior high and then put them back in that school for high school because they could jump on the train and get there.
Sure.
And then 2 years into them being there, the school started a preschool, so I became the administrator and a teacher of that preschool. So I could be in school with my kids, which was great because I could spy on them and they could ask me for money for snacks.
Yeah.
So it worked out for both of us.
They were older. You
They were in high school, but I was teaching
okay.
little, so.
All right.
So, and then rec division, it sounds like the rec division's always been something.
I was very fortunate, grew up with saints that had clear understanding of the Word of God rightly divided. So I was so fortunate to always be exposed. Now, as a kid, I didn't take it serious. I wasn't aware, I always thought, well, everybody must know the Bible, it's certainly from a grace perspective. And so in that sense, I've been real fortunate. I didn't have to relearn or jettison any kind of religious baggage. I didn't have any of that.
I grew up Presbyterian and Nazarene, and I didn't care. I would 3 times a week, Dad coached the basketball team. You asked me today what they believe, I couldn't tell you. And I'm thankful for that now. My family came to see it through my grandmother. And so when we got serious, that was just where we went. And so, but I watch people struggle all the time. I know you do. They come and they have all this baggage of religion and they want to give it up. You can just see the struggle. I mean,
Understandable. So you're as a young child.
Yeah.
You believe what your parents teach you.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's hard to get
And
over
then
that.
you thought you said just guys cold calling in an apartment complex. I guess in Chicago. So
Yeah, no, they were just very serious.
And they were part of Shorewood at the time.
No.
Oh.
So what happened was they had grown up in what was Des Plaines Bible Church at that time. Craig Massey was one of the pastors there, and they had a group called the Tent Makers. And this is for guys who were teens in their late 60s, early 70s. And it was kind of a way to bring in these hippie kids and get them into the church. And so they had kind of a casual group, but he taught them right division.
Wow.
And so they really got serious about it. So I don't know, at some point along the line, they kind of left that church and ended up starting their own home Bible study. And so the home Bible study was just a bunch of 20-somethings that they had rounded up and gotten to come and we had a really good sized group.
That's great.
And we'd have a Bible study, we'd go out to dinner together and, we just kind of hung together. And so it's within that group, a couple people got married.
Was this the 80s, late 70s?
It would have been late 70s.
Yes, I mean, just think about what's going on in the world in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's fantastic that you know there's a
I
bunch of
know.
20-somethings in
Yeah.
Chicago
Yeah,
without a church
just
studying
doing
right
it.
division. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the things we're going to see later tonight is the Word of God's not bound, and it's no
Yeah.
matter what's going on in society, the Word of God will still work.
Right,
You know,
and
it's
it
just-
did. And, there was a lot of people that were ready for it and wanting to hear it. And I got excited about it, of course, because it answered all my problems with the Bible being contradictory, so-called, what it turns out it isn't.
Right.
So I was excited enough to bring it to my work, and 2 or 3 of the ladies there started coming regularly
I was
to
just
the
gonna
Bible
ask you about
study.
that. So because you worked in a Christian church. or in a
Well, no,
Christian
actually,
school.
this is before that, before I worked there.
Okay.
Before I got married, I was working with handicapped adults. And so the
Okay.
agency I worked for, my boss, some of you may know Deborah Johnson. She lives in Virginia now. She went to John Verstegen's church for a lot of years. She was my boss, and I got her to come to the Bible study and get saved into Grace. And now she has a wonderful ministry with her husband in Virginia, doing
Wow,
grace
okay.
and life coaching and all that. And then another gal came along and was into it and got really involved, and then she kind of walked away eventually. But anyway, we were able to bring more people in because young people can reach young people.
Yes, right.
She came to see it through you. She ends up in Southern California for some
Yeah.
time, and now she's got a ministry in Virginia.
Yeah,
mean,
I know,
praise
that's
the Lord. That's
great.
that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, well, and
That's
she,
just awesome.
so when she got saved and got into this, her first husband left her. He was not interested. But she went out to John's church and met a guy, and she married Brian Johnson, and that's how they got. And then they ended up out in Virginia because that's where one of them was originally from.
Okay.
So they were kind of going back home, and they couldn't afford California.
You that's an interesting thing
It
about
was
the
kind of expensive.
We
Yeah.
go down and we teach every year. We have like 10 years now in Southern California at their conference. And the thing that always gets me about that is that conference is almost everybody that goes to their church. But they have had so many people go to their church and then move to other parts of the country. Half of the people don't go there anymore, but they're coming, they're coming home.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many, and I think you're right, a lot of people go to Southern California and they can't.
Yeah, they can't stay there.
Well, I think the point Deborah made to me was she wanted her kids and be home with them,
Yeah.
but it took 2 jobs just to keep a trailer, to live in a trailer.
Yeah.
And so that moving to Virginia, she was able to be home, homeschool her kids, have a better life, so.
We lived down there 37 years ago in a 2-bedroom apartment right where John is in Orange County. And I think we paid $2,500 a month.
Ooh, even better.
37 years ago.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it was crazy. Just an amazing amount.
But I have a question, when your children were in the Christian school and high school and you were the teacher for the kindergartners, how is that knowing right division, being in a Christian school?
Well, we're in a Calvinist school.
Okay,
which,
so how did
you know,
that go with just your children and you?
So it's interesting, so Chuck Wilcher's son, Sam, is in the same grade as my son.
Okay,
And the way he tells it is, your son, I admired him so much. He would get in that Bible teacher's face and ask question after question and give him verse after verse. And he just challenged that man every step of the way. And I'm sitting back here, I'm too shy to do it, but I say, go, Alex. So that was my son's experience.
good,
My
yeah,
daughter,
good foundation.
I don't think my daughter cared. She was just
Okay.
there for the fun.
Okay.
So she made friends and she was just, having a good time. But yeah, I don't know. I think they were able, and it turned out we ended up getting about 6 or 8 staff there that were all Grace believers.
That's
And
Wow.
a couple of them were in the high school.
fantastic.
So
That
we were
is,
able
that's
to talk to
wonderful.
people at all different grade levels. We have right now, one is in 2nd grade teaching right now, one is in the 7th and 8th grade. The preschool, there's 2 or 3, so
Wow.
we've been able to kind of infiltrate a little bit.
That's awesome.
That
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah, you say your daughter was just there making friends, and that's the way I was.
Yeah.
But my mom and dad tricked me, because when things were tough, I knew where to go.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I knew where to go,
Yeah.
but all that stuff that they did, that I was whatever
Still
mom
the
and dad,
foundation,
it
right?
still has a
Yeah.
foundation,
Yeah.
and your parents did the
Christ
same
is
for
the
you.
foundation, yeah.
It's again, it's amazing to me the power of the word.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. So this is before you guys got married, then you went through grade school of the Bible.
Yes, and kind of.
Did you know you knew what you
Yeah.
Okay.
The school at the time, it was maybe 2.5 years of curriculum, but don't hold me to that, but we were single, we got married, and I think.
A year
it was
later is
coming
when
to
we
the-
moved.
Yeah, so I think I ended the school just after we got married.
Okay.
Yeah, it was right
I'm
on.
hoping to do this with Richard when he comes out and tell him, and I'll ask him some of these same questions. But what was it like being in that first class?
Oh, it was, well, the guys were wonderful, and of course, Richard's teaching style, just chock full of information, and of course, he told the guys over and over again, you guys got to study, he provided without doubt a solid foundation, and he provided more than just the skeleton. So, his approach was always, listen, you guys need to continue studying and learning and so forth. So, and the guys were just wonderful guys. Everyone was always encouraging one another. We would do things together, like a group of us, Chuck, Greg, me, actually, a couple of other guys, we would start a couple of different ministries. When we had visitors at Shorewood, we would get the contact information, we would reach out to them. There were times where we would meet with them in their homes. We would bring groceries to some folks that were struggling financially. We were helping out with the Chicago Gospel Mission in downtown Chicago. So we used to do street work in Grant Park, State Street, Michigan Avenue.
Wow.
So it was great to see the guys not just show up for the classroom every Tuesday night,
Right.
but we would do things ministry related, on the weekends or on other days. So there was a lot of energy and a high level of interest. Everybody was serious.
Wow, that's
How many of the
great.
guys started ministries or
Yeah,
pastored?
Ted Fellows.
Ted Fellows was in the class, of course. Chuck was in the class. Art Johnson was in the
Yeah, Mike
class.
Johnson.
I was in the class, and so it was a great group of guys. And I mentioned to someone earlier, for prep and delivery, that was kind of an odd experience where all of the young preachers during prep and delivery, you were assigned 15, 20 minutes to teach a topic, a lesson, whatever it was. But when you taught, all of the guys were given critique sheets.
Oh,
And so,
intimidating.
yeah, so
Yeah.
as turn to Romans, and all of a sudden they're writing. And it's like, but everybody was very kind, very gracious, very constructive in any criticism. Chuck was actually kind of tough on me.
Yeah, I believe it.
We were good friends, but you need to kind of make eye contact. You need to do this. Whatever it was. Okay, Chuck. So, but it was a great experience, and meeting together like that, it's a special thing. I know most of the students, they go through the video, they watch online or through the DVDs or whatever that is, and when you're, I think, on your own, you got to really, be disciplined.
Yes,
When
right.
you're showing up at a class on a Tuesday
Right.
night, you've got a support group.
Well, I've been told a lot of people end up doing what I do. They get into it about a year and a half, and then the ministry starts, and
Yeah.
then another job, and
Oh, yeah.
it's tough. And that's my excuse. And I'm just like, it's something I'm lazy or didn't get back to it. I just, life happened.
That's true of a lot of people.
It's got to be neat though to be part of that first class.
I
See-
know,
See, I mean,
And
hundreds, thousands of men have been trained, even women,
Oh, yeah.
that trained for the ministry. I mean,
And
I
you were the
remember-
first class.
and so I teach by, I think I told you, I kind of got here by accident. I never wanted to do this, but when we were at Tillamook years ago, just pouring. I worked where we used to meet, we had a mess hall. And so Richard and I were walking out. I don't know how he does this, but I said, Richard, I'd maybe like to go through grade school of Bible. How would I get signed up? And he gets that little grin on his face that he gets. Here, Dave, here's the application right here. And I'm just looking like, you gotta be kidding me. So now, when I'm in the room, and he hands out a certificate to somebody, if I'm in the room, he'll always say, "This is something Dave Stout will never get." But it really has been a blessing. We talked about Pennsylvania, how you got back to Chicago and Shorewood. So I know we're going to talk about something else in a minute, but just for the last, how long have you been there at Shorewood then? 25 years?
95. Yeah.
Wow.
So 30 years.
30 years now, yeah.
Wow.
30 years.
And does that ever surprise you when somebody says 15 years ago and you think it's the 80s?
Oh, yeah.
And it's not.
Yeah.
It's actually this century.
Yeah.
Yeah. So currently, today, what has been your role there
Well, I've always.
as a couple?
Oh, well, I've always functioned as, quote, a co or associate pastor. Richard, of course, has always been the pulpit ministry. I mean, he teaches 3 times a week.
Okay.
And he was doing radio. He was doing 5 half-hour radio programs per week. And when he would travel to Michigan once a month to film, actually Message of Grace as well as Forgotten Truths. So, he did the bulk of the teaching ministry. I did teach and continue to teach, adult Sunday school, and then
Okay.
other Bible study groups. We've actually seen a couple of churches started because of the Bible studies. In fact, Shore Bible Church South. I was meeting with these ladies outside of Chicago, and for maybe a year or so, and then finally we plugged Art Johnson into that group, so they started the group, and we had other groups started and so forth. So I did have a teaching role. I guess I did almost all of the maybe administrative duties, whether it's just dealing with the bills, the church, the issues. We have a relatively nice sized building, and that takes some attention, whether it's dealing with radio stations, television stations, other maybe financial statements, things like that. So there's a bit of administrative activities that I've been behind, dealing with, first-time visitors, trying to do some follow-up with the contact. That's always been a bit challenging. We're trying something new this go around. So, in the beginning, started the flea market ministry, tried overseeing some of the outreach ministries. The flea market ministry was really, really wonderful. But see, what I would try to do is get other guys to kind of adopt it or to inherit those ministries. So I didn't have to be the one always doing it. So, we've seen some fair ministry, the flea market ministry. We see some things going on, Bible studies. We have men's fellowship. So there's also ladies fellowship. Now Sherry, of course, she's involved with the ladies fellowship. So things can be busy.
Yeah. You said that you teach the adult Sunday school. That's the 9 o'clock hour, right? That's in the main.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The main meeting room.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yes, that's just hour one, right?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
We sometimes say, the 2 sessions in the morning.
Right.
Yeah, the first session on the second.
And then I assume, I know Richard has always traveled. You probably, so that spot when he was traveling, right?
And
What did he travel, 15, 20 weekends a year?
Well, at least once a month. In fact, one of the reasons why he reached out and asked, hey, would you be interested in returning to Chicago was because, he did have the school, he has a national ministry. And so he was traveling a good, weekend every month and sometimes maybe twice a month, So, and of course, as he's traveling, I'm the pulpit filler and so on. So that freed him up to concentrate on some other things. And
So would you do the 2 lessons then, the Sunday school and then turn around and do the main service?
Yeah, when we were at the old building, I was doing 3, the 2 Sunday mornings and then the Sunday evening.
Wow.
If he was away for that Wednesday, then I would teach the Wednesday. He would try to be back by Wednesday.
But that's a lot of teaching.
Oh, it is, but it was a good discipline and, we enjoyed it. And now we do have young guys who have been through the school. And so it's nice to have a pool of young guys that have a real heart to teach.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
right.
I don't need to do, if Richard's gone, I'll just do the main meeting, the second session. Hey, we got somebody to do the adult
That's
Sunday
great.
school class.
That really is.
And,
And that's how you want a church to grow.
Oh, absolutely.
Because
absolutely.
then that just lifts them up and edifies them to be able to teach. And that's
Absolutely.
great.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you guys are both gone this week.
Right.
Now, and we,
When you guys came to Portland, you guys were both gone too.
Yeah, it just happened to be.
yeah, we've always.
We try not to do that,
Right. We've always avoided doing that, right? And, but, circumstances, so we're feeling more comfortable in doing that, knowing that it's okay. We do have guys that can easily step up and do it. We would still prefer not to both be gone,
Sure,
but,
absolutely.
we're not as rigid
Yeah.
about that, which is fine.
No, I'm excited. I know it happened twice with us out here, once in Portland, so
Yeah.
I feel very honored. That happened. So again, there's one thing, we'll talk about, for those of you people that don't know, because I think this is hilarious. You mentioned the old building, so you have, when did you move into the new building's not new, it's what, 10 years, 20 years ago?
2005. We
Okay, so
built
they've been here 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And for those of you that don't know, they moved into a restaurant called Chez Paul,
Yeah.
which is House of Paul. So I think that's great that a Grace Church is in the House of Paul.
Well, and another fun fact is one of our couples who mainly run the youth group were married there when it was Chez Paul.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So they can show us where they got married in the building.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So there's a big question I'm gonna ask you that I told you about that we'll talk about. But as you look out, what do you see the challenges for the Grace movement are today?
Challenges? Well, I mean, I think this is true of every generation. Dispensational Bible truth has always been under attack and will always continue to be under attack. And that's okay. You know, I think you understand, as Grace churches, the goal isn't trying to be big. The goal isn't trying to be popular. The goal isn't trying to lure people and you know, to provide to people whatever they think a church is. And for me, that's great. Keep it simple. You know, Fred Smith, FedEx, used to say the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing.
That's right.
So let's press on, continue to be faithful to the Word of God, continue to raise up the next generation, faithful men teaching others, you know, and reproduce yourself in that way. We're not competing. Don't compete. I mean, we can learn how other ministries do some things, but we're not going to be all things to all people. So
Right.
just remain faithful. We're going to see people come and go. We're going to see guys that all of a sudden have decided to bail out, as it were, leave the ministry. That's okay. Just press on,
Yeah.
be faithful. It's better to have a smaller group of faithful saints than to worry about, you know, being larger or anything
Having a
like that.
coffee
So,
bar and a
yeah, you
rock
know,
band.
the bells
And
and
everyone's
whistles.
saying babes in Christ,
Right.
not growing.
Yeah, that's
Exactly,
true.
exactly. So I think it's just being faithful, being
Yeah.
steady, being persistent. Don't, you know, be pressured by false expectations about what a ministry is. Just be thankful for the folks that are just, love the Word of God and want to learn and just focus on them.
And we do see some younger guys coming up teaching and doing things, which is great. One of the things we have noticed in our church over the years, though, is there's a lot of our young people, when they leave to go off to college or to work and, you know, marriage, whatever, they're not coming back, which is very concerning. But there's always still a faithful remnant that wants to go forward. And we keep seeing these guys that'll just suddenly pop up and they want to keep going. So I think, you know, the future's still in good hands.
You know, one of the things in recent years is you know, the internet. And you know when Paul writes about, you know, though you have 10,000 instructors.
Yeah.
And wow, it's so easy to not connect with a local church, a local Grace Assembly. And you've got every flavor of grace preachers, quite frankly, that are out there. And it is rather discouraging at times to see, you know, saints that they got their preacher A here, preacher B the next night, preacher C, preacher D. And, you know, not everybody is talking the same language. Not all of these guys are teaching the same things. And so I sense, I hear maybe some confusion among some of the saints. And so, you know, Paul, of course, when he admonished the elders at Ephesus, right, in Acts chapter 20, it says, you know, watch out, because, you know, there are going to be some wolves out there.
Yes,
Well, the wolves are on the internet now.
Right.
And you know, it's so easy, somebody can get upset, get their feelings hurt, and hey, I don't need you, I'm just gonna go jump on the internet. And you have 10,000 instructors out there. I'll tell you, the media, the internet, it's not a healthy thing at times. Thank gosh, you know, I mean, I'm thankful for the internet. You've got people that are so isolated in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's a lifeline for people. And so I'm not going to knock it. You know, it could be used in a good way, but There's some bad stuff spreading, and it spreads fast.
It's spread so fast. I tell my people, there's, not my people, but the group that meets with us, I say, I think I told one of you, you guys are a bunch of wimps today. You guys don't understand it. To drive 2 hours to go to church back 20 years ago, we would happily do that. My grandma, when she came to see Right Division, she somehow found the Marine Bible Searchlight, which would be a monthly mail.
Yeah.
And probably the Tape of the Month Club, which was, and you get a hold of Shorewood, get a cassette probably mailed out to her, and I think she probably had to mail it back, so she's probably 6 months behind,
Yeah.
and she's current. And that's where the conference is. I mean, she drove all the way up to Chilliwack, Canada,
Wow.
and the people today, they'd rather watch the internet than drive 15 minutes to church, to the local church. And there's something about fellowship. One thing I've learned, I get a lot of people that find history less felt, but they think that they believe what they believe. Les Feldick, and I don't know Les Feldick's passed away now, but they would say, well, I don't know that Les Feldick believes that. And I go, right, just because you agree with Les, don't think that he automatically agrees with you. And I've noticed people always think that the person they listen to on TV agrees with them.
Because they can't have that
Because
conversation.
they can have the conversation.
Yeah, they can't ask questions.
That's the value of that local assembly.
Yeah.
Or hey, I was reading and I came across this, what do you think? Error in and of itself is not the issue, as long as it gets addressed and you can move on.
Sure.
Right.
But the other thing there is to be said for being together physically, if you can, and we understand there are people who can't.
Right.
They live in the middle of nowhere, there's no church available, we know that. We know a whole state with no church, I mean, that's grace. So I understand that, but if you have one, what happened when all this Zoom stuff started, especially over COVID,
Yes.
is even our own people who live 5 minutes from
Yes.
church are more comfortable sitting on their couch watching online. Well, then you're not there to one another us. You're not there to lift up a brother or sister in
Yes,
Christ who
right.
needs help. You're not there to even know what the needs are. You're not there to be a contributor. You're not there to greet a new person and make them feel welcome. I mean, you're not there to do the ministry.
Well,
And
and
that's a
we're all members
problem.
of one another.
Right,
We all need to be together, to be
Yes.
members of one another.
exactly. And you can't do that effectively online.
No, perfected saints work in the ministry and edification.
Right.
Yeah.
That happens in person.
Yes.
In person.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting question as I look at it, and it seems to be eventually when people answer what the challenge, it does break down to technology.
Mhm.
It's a good thing, but it's
Yes.
a problem.
Yes,
Because right, the thing I find too, especially with people that are new to Right Division, they don't have discernment
right.
to see different things. One of the people that's with us, he's our kind of our quasi music director right now. He got saved in prison, or just out of prison. But so he was going to the local church that his wife found. But at the same time, he happened to come across Les Feldick and he didn't know. So he's listening to Les Feldick. He thinks everybody's teaching what Les Feldick is saying because he didn't know any better. And then he starts paying attention. He goes, "That's not what's being taught up there." And so that there, it's a good thing. But then a lot of people, but then he was just coming to everybody. And so we sat down and we said, well, let's just go back to what the scripture says. And well, this person says that, and I know where it comes from, but let's just go through some of these things. And that's what you need. That's what that in-person thing is all about, and so valuable for. So there's big changes coming at Shorewood. Tell us a little bit about it, because I know it's getting out there. I know there's some bad information.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't share more than you need to,
Yeah.
but where you're
You
comfortable with.
know, Richard, of course, we all need to think about the future, right?
Sure.
We're not going to be here forever, so we understand that. So, at Shorewood, last couple of years, we've been, thinking about the future and preparing for the future. Are we raising the next generation, as the old timers begin to pass on to glory and so forth? And then, Richard has had some health concerns, and so he physically is not what he used to be. He's still teaching. He's not retiring. He's still teaching and should continue to teach. Period. But as he's beginning to feel, some of the load, he's just personally being much more serious about how the future's going to look. So what we as a board, we actually met last fall to discuss, well, what would the short-term thinking be and what would the long-term thinking be. So we've decided that this year would be the year where we're going to begin to transition, meaning that I'll begin to move into a role where I can take on a little bit more of the teaching ministry and some other things in that regard, which then means Richard perhaps can just kind of transition a little bit away from having the primary teaching role at Shorewood. So actually, I just started a couple of months ago. I've taken the Sunday evening study. Richard has always, for years, taught the Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday evening. So I'm now teaching Sunday evenings, and he and Cynthia, they're there. I mean, they're physically okay, by the way. It's not like they're infirmed or anything like that. But he's aware that there are changes taking place. So I've taken the Sunday evening. One thought is maybe I'll be doing some of the second meeting teaching, and then he would do some of the first hour teaching. As you know, the first hour as a Sunday school class, it's a different dynamic than the second session because you have people that aren't as regular, you have visitors, there's just a different dynamic with the second session. So we're going to mix it up just a little bit. I spoke to him. I personally want him to continue teaching Wednesday evenings. I mean, he just literally started the book of Isaiah. So if he's up to it, if he's physically comfortable and he's okay, he'll continue doing that. So we're going to, little by little, and you know what, there's still flexibility. We'll play it by ear, we'll just see. But the reality is we got to start getting ready. He's doing well. I mean, he's has doctor's appointments, and I know most people already know that he had, at the time it was considered a TIA, a stroke, and then after further, medical work and testing and so forth, it's possible there's some seizure issues, so he's been on different medications, and so physically they're addressing some of that and trying to make it a little bit better for him to be able to continue on. But he'll say, I know things aren't the same, he'll be first to admit, I would say the edge, it's not there, but he's still a treasure. Let me just say this, Cynthia, I had to explain it anyway. We were talking about the future, and of course, Cynthia, she's completely concerned about the future, and rightly so, I understand that, And so we're talking about, well, what you're going to be able to do, or what should he not do, blah, blah, blah. I said, Cynthia, I said, Richard's a freak of nature. And then it dawned on me, I hope she understood what I meant by that.
Yeah, it wasn't insulting.
Yeah, right.
His ministry is a one of a kind.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not going to be repeated for a while.
A guy like Richard, his ability to teach, his grasp of understanding.
Yes.
And he's been in it 50 years plus, right? You don't find that type of a man in the work of the ministry. In any, rarely, maybe in every generation. I don't know who the next quote guy is going to be for the next generation. So when I say he's a freak of nature, I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. A man of his caliber, the impact that his ministry has had, not just locally at Shorewood, nationally, worldwide for that matter. He's a treasure in that sense. So as long as he is comfortable and he's well enough to teach, he should do that without, jeopardizing anything. Now, I think he would like to do some more traveling. COVID messed things up, as he had cut back on travel and so forth, other meetings and conferences across the country. And he would like to do a little bit more of that, but I don't think Cynthia's really.
I don't think Cynthia wants it.
Yeah.
So, she's not excited about that idea, but he would like to do more traveling. So that's going to be part of this transitional thing, which then means I need to transition out of some things that I'm currently doing, which I am doing. I'm preparing a gentleman to kind of, I jokingly call him the administrative pastor, and then also begin to transition some of the younger guys, hey, the work and the role that you're gonna play in the future, right? Richard's gonna go home to glory, we're gonna go home to glory. And so, we wanna pass the baton.
That's right.
Let's hope the doors don't just close, there should be no.
Well, that's where I think you're respecting the congregation by having a plan.
Yes.
And we just had a church just the other day where the pastor passed away.
And then,
And then it
It
left,
closed.
it just left with the church. And so, I mean, I think it's just a respectful thing that you as the elder board and as the pastors of your church are having a plan. And you're right, it can be a transitional plan, just moving of roles. And then, another thing, it gives the younger men who want to serve the ability to serve.
Right.
If there's no openings to serve, they're not able to.
That's
You know
why-
what I mean?
that's the
You're actually
advantage,
giving someone the
absolutely.
ability to
Absolutely.
serve.
That's why the local ministry can never replace the internet. Again, there's some good things, in the internet, you can learn the Bible. But how do you identify men to function in a leadership position?
Yeah.
You can't do that
You
on
can't,
the internet,
right.
So
You can't
there's,
serve on the internet.
No.
exactly. So that's why it is needful to have a local assembly of saints, And so anyway, for Shorewood, we would hope that this can continue on to the next 50, 100
Yeah, and a
years.
planned transition without.
Oh, yeah.
So you talk about the guys that want to, we've got a person that would like to teach. I mean, my schedule, because of how we do it, is a little kind of weird back in Portland. But because I'm gone this week, he's taking the opportunity to take Tuesday night study. And he's just so excited.
Yeah.
He's so excited. Last Tuesday, he was already writing on the board because he doesn't have a key to the building. So he's, I'm gonna get in early. So he has all less all right down on the board. He's ready to go. I love it. I love it. And so, they're not gonna record us, I'll have somebody listen to it so I can tell me about it, but that's such a good thing. I remember when I started teaching, my pastor asked me 5, 6 times, would you teach? I said, no. Then one time I said yes, and I went, who said that? And it's just so important.
It is, and realistically, one of the challenges, obviously, you grow up under a ministry of a particular man, Richard, back in Pennsylvania, Henry Cole, Craig Massey, the Spain Bible Church, we could go on and on and on, right? And so when that pastor that you've sat under for decades is no longer in the leadership position or dies tragically, well, you're going to lose people.
Yeah.
That's just.
That's why it should be the message, not the man.
That is absolutely true, but it in a perfect world. So, and that's okay. By moving in a transitional direction, you can kind of prepare people. Okay, it's not a shock.
Right.
And even in the transition, there's people say, I don't care for that guy, I don't care for this guy, and they pick and choose and all of that. That's their business,
Yeah,
right?
right.
But even in a transitional way of moving, you can kind of encourage people to recognize it really is the message.
Yes.
Of course,
right.
you're going to have well-seasoned preachers. You're going to have, guys that are a little uncomfortable even teaching, and so there's different styles, different dynamic. But listen, the bigger picture, it's God's word. And
Right.
the importance to be faithful and do the work of ministry and get it out. And that is a mature assembly. When you have an assembly that isn't revolving around a personality, it isn't revolving around the charisma, but it revolves around the real issue. And that's when we got a good assembly. Regardless of who's going to be behind that pulpit, if it's God's word that is clearly, faithfully, accurately being communicated, and hey, we're going to stick with that. That's the sign of a good, healthy ministry.
Absolutely. The other thing too that I think, and this really comes back to the internet, and I do see this in local assemblies. I don't see it in internet churches, however you want to define that. Is the issue is not right division. The issue is grace. Right division is how you get there.
Right.
And the internet can teach you right division. It can teach you to draw the chart. I can teach you in 30 minutes to draw the chart, right? Anybody can do that. But grace is something that you learn over time.
Yeah.
And you acquire knowledge and then understanding and then the wisdom. And you go all over the internet and find a lot of people that are right dividers, but not full of grace. You know, you and I have talked about a few of them. And that's very sad, because the issue is grace. So you get this right division, and I'm a right division teacher, everybody knows that. But the issue is grace. And that's what you see in thriving assemblies. I've seen it in Shorewood, I've seen it on the Green Bible Society. It's that issue of
Grace on display.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I know this is true, it comes from the person speaking, you know? And they telling us why it's so important to have good, mature teachers. One thing about Richard, I think he said it when on Brian's Grace History Project, the part about, maybe, I love Richard, if he ever hears this, but you know you've been around a while when you are featured in a history project thing, right? Brian's the Grace History Project, from Paul to Richard. So one of the things that Richard said in that, and I have found this to be very true, I will struggle with the passage, maybe not even understand how the words are put together. And then I'll hear Richard talk about it, and he so clearly delineates exactly what, and then I go, oh, well, that's obvious. But he said in that Grace History Project, I think where he said it, even in a novel, he can look at a sentence and instantly get it. And I think you see that come across in his teaching.
Oh, yeah.
Because he makes his teaching so simple on things I struggle with, and I walk away going, duh.
Yeah, you know, some guys can make it look easy.
Yeah.
And, you know, for those of you, you know, how many hours do you have to put in? Some people don't realize it takes hours.
It does,
And over time, of course, you know, but some guys, you know, they make it look like I just got up this morning and decided I'm going to teach on Satan. That's not how it works.
No.
I mean, there are hours and hours of study time.
And you know, people forget too, sometimes it's not studying, sometimes it's thinking about something you've been thinking about. And, you know, I'll be sitting and I'll miss a whole TV show that, did you see that? No, I was off on something I'm going to teach in 6 weeks.
That's right.
So, all right, well, super. Do you have any more questions, honey?
One last one, since Alex is going to be changing his role in the church, do you see a change that you're going to be needing to do to support him, or?
Yeah, well, how are you?
It depends, because Cynthia and I pretty well work together in just about everything. Like, we both teach Sunday school, we both work on the women's group, we both work, you know, in every wedding, every funeral, every event that comes to our church that we coordinate and help prepare for. So we're kind of co-workers in that anyway.
So you're already very involved.
So
in
very
the daily
involved.
church,
Oh, yeah, very
functions.
involved.
Okay.
I could see her if Richard has to back away, I could see her backing away a little bit and me taking that role.
Okay.
I don't necessarily want it because she's really good at doing it. But, you know, we've been together long enough that I could do it if I have to.
See, that brings up another, well, I mean, but see, when you think about transition, well, listen, our Sunday school teachers, well, are you preparing for the future?
That's
You know?
true, we need to,
And
because we
so-
have some that are pretty elderly.
Well, you know, but there are, so it's not just the pulpit,
Right.
it's other, where everybody should always think about replacing themselves,
Yeah.
right?
This is a responsible thing
Yeah.
to do, I
Well,
think.
this is part of the work
Yeah,
of the ministry,
And like I said,
right? If the
it's-
ministry dies, the work didn't go on.
right.
only gives others a chance to grow and fill that role.
People
If you
want
have a
help.
Sunday school teacher who's been there 30 years, and there's never been an opportunity for
Yeah.
someone else to
Right.
fill that role.
Yeah.
And that's important to do as you build the body, right?
April and I see it. We do so much out here ourselves because we've had to for so many
Yeah.
years. The Walkers did it by themselves and they gave it to us now. And now we have some people that really want to help. And April and I are we just get in and do it anyhow.
Right.
But it's tough for us to say yes.
Yeah.
But then they're also finding out that she and I both delegate. So somebody asked about the music and I said, the music is yours. And then you come, well, what about the music is yours? You know,
Take it on.
and that's great. So, but yeah, it is, people want to help. And that's how they feel involved too.
Sure,
You
yeah.
know, so it's.
They take ownership.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
you want that, and it's especially when where we're trying to grow and it's
Just
just, it's just tough to say, okay, yeah, you can do this.
Right, because you're so used to doing
We're
it
just
and
used-
just you
and-
have it down.
Yeah, we have it down, we have a piece of paper,
Right.
we pull out for
And you have a way of
conference,
doing it.
yeah, and it just gets done.
But that's how others grow.
Right.
by doing
Yeah, and it's funny, I can see Cynthia when she comes out to tell them, but sometimes April will do something different than Cynthia does. But I can see Cynthia over at her table.
Yeah. Absolutely. She's got her way.
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, thank you both very much for making the time today. I know we all kind of didn't get sleep with the trains going by all the time, so that was great. And this will be super. And you'll be one of our first or second podcasts.
All right.
We're gonna do Pastor Dean Antonucci next Monday and on the 30th. So we're gonna try to do a little small version of what Joel Hay does. And as I get people out here.
A small version with Joel?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, because Joel's is big, mine will be small compared to, but as I get pastors get out here, I'm gonna try and do that, and then
Nice.
we'll do some online
And I
stuff
think
too.
it's important to get to know the pastors and their background and,
Absolutely.
I just think it's great, so thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely, same time, and hopefully somebody will hear this, and if there's some misinformation coming out about what's going on in Chicago that, because as we all know, misinformation right now can be killed, it needs to be said.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, well, thank you, everybody. We'll see you again. We'll be teaching this again in an hour or two here. And then the podcast with Dean will be in about a week. So thank you all very much.